Hello and welcome to Nikolay's genetics lessons, and today we are going to talk about population genetics. And here's the first question. Over time, the movement of people on Earth has steadily increased. This has altered the course of human evolution by increasing, and you have to choose one of these answers. Let me start with the answer D, geographic isolation. It is not increased, of course. On the contrary, now we have less geographic isolation than before. Non-random mating, again, before we had non-random mating much more frequently it happened than nowadays, because usually people can choose their mate within their village, for example. They were geographically isolated, and to choose your spouse from the different village would be the same as today we would choose someone from different city or even from different country. I suppose these two variants were easy to eliminate, but these two, A and B, would be harder to choose. For example, genetic drift would be during World War II, when Nazis came to Poland. They killed a lot of Jews, thus creating a genetic drift. Or this is example of change in allelic frequencies in a population. And the last variant, gene flow, and this is going to be example when people move between cities, countries, and so they create again change in allelic frequencies, but this is due to migration. For example, in United States, due to gene flow or waves of migration from different parts of our planet, sometimes more people from Mexico coming, sometimes from Europe, sometimes from Asia. Due to this gene flow, allelic frequencies in a population are going to change. So the correct answer, as you see, that movement of people on Earth increase evolution by increasing gene flow. In other words, now you know that evolution is just change in allelic frequency in a population. And here's the second question. The Dunkers are a religious group that moved from Germany to Pennsylvania in the mid-1700s. They do not marry with members outside their own immediate community. Today the Dunkers are genetically unique and differ in gene frequencies at many loci from all other populations, including those in their original homeland. Which of the following mechanisms likely explain the genetic uniqueness of this population? Now let's think about variant A, heterozygote advantage and stabilizing selection. An example would be sickle cell anemia, when in homozygous form it produces severe genetic disorder, very dangerous, but in heterozygous form has mild effect on human health, and in that area another very serious disease is widespread, which is malaria, but people who are heterozygous for this genetic disorder would be more resistant and can survive. So this is deleterious genetic disorder, but in heterozygous form it can provide certain degree of protection. So we say that this is heterozygote advantage and produce stabilizing selection. When number of people who are heterozygous is much higher than usually we can find in normal population, which is not under selection pressure, in this case, which is malaria. Now let's consider variant D, population bottleneck, and hardy-weinberg equilibrium. And another example would be Indian population of the United States. Again, when Europeans came, population of the Indians shrinked, and we can say that they experienced population bottleneck, which later was followed by hardy-weinberg equilibrium. Those, of course, there is a flow of alleles in the population and out of the population due to interracial marriages, but more or less we can say that this population now stabilized and in hardy-weinberg equilibrium, which means that generation to generation frequency of the alleles in this population are stable and doesn't change. Now we have to choose between founder effect and genetic drift and mutation and natural selection, because this population were isolated for over 300 years. Of course, certain unique mutations accumulated in this population, and this population also were under the pressure of natural selection, because just a couple hundred years ago, about half of the children in any family would die. So we can say this is natural selection, and it doesn't matter whether the family was poor or rich. About 50% of the children would die in those times. It's now hard to imagine, but this is just a reality. But actually we have here to choose variant B, that this group of people actually went through what we call founder effect. They came here, though they were surrounded by other group of peoples, but because they were isolated, we can say that major factor here is founder effect, small group of people that represent large population which they left, and of course allelic frequencies here, just due to this random factor of founder effect, would be different from the original group. And due to genetic drift, which also usually happens due to natural selection, allelic frequencies in this isolated group even change more drastically. So now these people would look drastically different from original population in Germany which they left, due to these factors, which is founder effect and genetic drift. So answer B. And this is all for today. Subscribe and see you in the next video. Goodbye.